Welcome to the podcast that's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee, and we have a very different episode here with you today because I just have one guest with me, and it's Sika Henry. How you doing, Sika?
Good. How are you? Just me.
It's going to be great. Doing well. Thank you. So a quick introduction so then people can know who we're speaking with here. But Sika is a triathlete who is going for her pro card right now in Ironman triathlon. Super exciting stuff. And we just recorded a successful athletes podcast with you where we went through your story, and it's super impressive. There's tons of great insight within there from from going from running, well, actually from even further back, going from collegiate track and field and high jump, and then going over to running, then going long with running, and then going into triathlon and everything that you figured out throughout that process, coming back from a horrific accident, racing Ironman world champs on like 2 weeks notice, which is just crazy. So tons of great stuff in that podcast. So everybody listening to this, I would very strongly recommend that you go over and listen to that Successful Athletes podcast episode, and we'll have it in the link below, or a link to that in the description below, whether that's on YouTube or whatever podcast app you're using to listen to on this. So yeah, I'm excited, Sika. It's going to be good.
I hope
some
so.
try questions.
Yeah.
First things first, let's just get straight into Julie's question. This is actually going to be a somewhat shorter episode this week. And also we excuse Amber. She was intending to be on the podcast, but had a family issue that she had to deal with. So all the best for that with Amber, and Nate's still healing the noggin from the concussion. So hopefully he'll be back soon. Julie's question. She says, first off, I want to say how much I'm getting out of using your product and also from the podcast. I especially like the instructions given during the workout. I, like others, frequently listen to the podcast as a distraction from the workout pain. But my question is related to pacing. For reference, I'm a 47-year-old female, 5'8", and I weigh 145 pounds. And my current FCP is 225, so she's a strong athlete. She says, my question, I've been riding with a ladies intermediate group for about a year, which has really improved my group riding skills and also my speed on shorter rides of about 50 miles or less. I consider myself a decent climber, but not a fast one. In 3 weeks, I have an event coming up, which is 115 miles and 13,000 feet of climbing. And Julie's event, by the way, has passed. I went back into the archives for this one because I felt like it'd be a great one for us to talk about. So I hope you did well, Julie. We're going to take a theoretical approach since your event already happened. But she says that's 115 miles, 13,000 feet of climbing. And one of the climbs is 35 miles long. That's a long climb. She says, my question is, I'm not sure how to pace myself on this ride. I'm afraid I'll blow up, and if I try to start fast and keep up with the ladies in my group who are also going, I might end up blowing up. Normally on these types of rides, I go at my own pace and ride comfortably, but part of me is curious to see just how fast I can go, and the other part is scared that I might DNF, and I do not want to do that. So what are your suggestions? When I read this question, Sika, I actually thought, well, this actually isn't that far off from a bike split. Like, even though triathlon bike splits don't have 35-mile long climbs usually, it's actually not too dissimilar. How have you worked out pacing for bike splits? Because it's an entirely different beast.
Go out conservative always. I have learned too many times when you overdo it. It's so easy when you feel great to go out really hard and, try to keep up with everybody and do what they're doing. And then before you know it, you're just like flatlining. So for me, it's all about proper pacing. And in terms of her nerves, I have been there. So I'm sure she's not the only one. I'm sure everybody is pretty nervous, but I think for me, it's better to just not overthink things and I don't know, I guess talk to the other people that she's riding with, get an idea of, like maybe there's a few people that she can, go out conservative with who are more around her FTP, which is crazy. I think you said 225. So I'm sure she did well.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a good point. Like a buddy system almost. Like you have athletes that you can pair up with that you can ride with at whatever pace that you need. And the interesting thing is we always think that whatever group we're with, we have to hold that pace or we'll be totally alone. But in almost every case, there's another group behind us or another person behind us that is actually going to be riding perfectly our pace, and we'll be able to ride with them really well. But like, we're so afraid to let go of that group, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and I might get dinged for this, but I think there's such a big difference between men and women. Like men, they seem to go out really hard, and women seem to be a little opposite. We seem to be like a little more conservative and Like we'd rather not go out really hard and blow up and have a little left in the tank. It's just something that I noticed riding with men versus women. I
Yeah,
don't know if
it's
you share that experience, but
I do. You're much more wise than us. We let ambition get the best of us far too often. And
yeah.
it's that competitive, typical, like, male type A environment that isn't very good for that. It takes so much restraint and to hold back and to not go really hard, especially when the group is going hard. So I think that it kind of comes down to how you measure your effort. How do you do that when you because I'm sure that you could ride your bike splits faster if you were just riding the bike, but on race day, you really try to hold yourself back within reason so then you can obviously still run. And considering you've already done a swim, you've already had a lot of activity into it. How do you actually pace it? Do you go off of power on race day?
Power.
How do you work that out? Yeah.
Yep. Power. And it sounds like she has a power meter as well. So yeah, luckily I have a great coach who's awesome about putting together a race plan for me, and he'll give me a range that I should stick with. So I am in the beginning, like at least the first 20 miles, because I usually do the half iron. So it's 56, but the first 20 miles, I'm really just holding back, trying to stay as conservative as possible. Like every time I start getting a little over that range that he said, I'm like, okay, reset, hold back. And yeah, and it's the same with, even running. I would rather be the one passing people at the end versus getting past. That is just so demoralizing for me. So yeah, I take confidence knowing, like, even if people are going by and they look strong in the beginning, it's like, all right, I'm going to see you later on.
Yeah, and it's that case with long bike, even if you don't have a run after that, just anything long on the bike too. It's remember that when you end up getting closer to threshold and going over threshold, those sort of efforts have somewhat of an exponential isn't the absolutely correct term, but in terms of implying what I'm going for here, it basically compounds the impact of that effort as your power gets even higher. It compounds, so it just makes it so much tougher to maintain power. You'll be amazed at what you can maintain if you keep steady power. And you'll be surprised you can maintain 0.8 IF, 80% of your threshold for a really long time.
Right.
But if you end up trying to hold 0.8, but then surging up to 120% every once in a while, or riding at threshold or just above threshold for a little bit, then it's almost impossible to hold that 0.8. It doesn't take much in our bodies, really. It's tough to hold on to.
You start feeling that lactic acid. You're like, oh no, I'm screwed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, once I get to that point, it's usually downhill from there. So
right.
The point is to not start feeling like that until the end.
Yeah. There's an interesting point with this too that she brings up with the fact that she says that she is curious to see how fast she can go, but she doesn't want to DNF. And this is actually a note that Amber made in here, and I think it's great, is it depends on like the consequences of this race, right? Like if you aren't paid to race, and this also is something where you can like afford to have some experimentation, meaning that, the race isn't like the big goal of the year, or it isn't some sort of big financial commitment where you really want to perform well on that day and perform per a plan. It can be a good opportunity to kind of see what you can do in probably very different from what you face in triathlon in the sense, because you always have the run following, but there is something to be said. I mean, you can surprise yourself on race day. I don't know if you've ever had experiences like that where whether it's running or whether it was even high jump, anything else outside of it, but where you end up kind of overcommitting for what you think you can do, and then you end up pulling through. Sometimes that can happen.
Yeah, that's the best when you do shock yourself. Sometimes you think that your fitness is like around here, and then you get into a race and you just totally surprise yourself. Like I have definitely gotten to the point. Actually, when I did Ironman 70.3 Augusta, I did start getting a little worried as I got closer to transition that I had overbiked. The course ended up being a lot hillier than I was expecting. Previous years it was flat, but there were a lot of railroad tracks that athletes complained about. So anyway, we had to go out in the country and there was a lot more climbing. So I hadn't anticipated that. And the plan my coach and I had put together was for a flatter course. So I was worried. I was like, oh my gosh, I might have overbiked. But I think my fitness was just a lot better than I had anticipated. And by the time I finished, I had pretty much PR'd, and then I had an awesome run. So I think the adrenaline, like on race day, can I think the mind is just, it's crazy how, like confidence can take over and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I think that there's a lot to be said for training, I guess, like proper training leading into an event. Like whenever I'm following a training plan and I'm following it to a T, I never go into a race wondering where I'm at and wondering what I'm going to be able to do. It's always like super clear. I'm like, well, I know that I can hold this for this. And it's like really straightforward because my training has shown me what I can do, and it's pushed me hard enough that like I'm really, I'm training to my limits before those events, that sort of a thing. But if it's a totally different race and you haven't trained for that sort of format, whether it's the duration, intensity course, or something that's a new experience, you might not have a perfect fix on how you can perform. So in this case, Julie, if this is like a totally foreign environment, what's the worst that happens if you blow up? That you'll probably lose that group and find another group that'll be behind you. So if you want to go for that tactic, go ahead. However, if you have a really good fix on your abilities in that sort of context, then form a plan and then stick to that plan. And that's the way to get the best result for sure. Mm-hmm. So it's all about your awareness of your abilities on that day. And once again, just kind of like a good tip for proper structured training, because usually if you're training for something specific, gives you a great indication of where you're at. Mm-hmm. So cool. Want to roll into Adolfo's question? Let's do it. He says, I'm struggling with swimming form. I recently went through a skills session. Yeah, all of us here, right? We all feel that way. He says, I recently went through a skills session with a coach and was filmed in the pool. My technique was horrible. Water was splashing everywhere, and I was not as smooth as I thought. I come from a soccer background, so maybe that's why. It's very different sports, I assume, soccer and swimming. He says, I've been doing triathlon for 5 years. So what can I do to get better? And particularly, he's talking about the swim. So he's been doing triathlon, but we don't know to what degree, like what intensity or what commitment level for 5 years, he says. What can you do to get better? We talked a little bit about this in the Successful Athletes podcast, Sika, but what would be your recommendations for somebody who is in quote, flailing in the pool like I do so terribly?
I do too. I feel your pain. Yeah, swimming, to me, it's different than any other sport I've done because it's so technically, it's all technicalities in the water, like how you pull. It's not necessarily a fitness thing, I think. So it's really just getting like a feel for the water. And we did talk about it on my previous podcast. And for me, one of the biggest differences that helped me was switching up my routine and swimming with a master swim group, being like in a team environment, learning how to use a clock, having a coach on deck who is critiquing my form and giving me pointers. When you do master swim group, you're not just doing freestyle, you're doing a lot of drills. The warm-up is generally like, when I swim on my own, my coach may have me warm up like 500 yards or something like that. And then I get right into the main set. When I do masters, we're swimming a lot more yardage. And the warm up can be like 1,500 yards worth of drills, like kicking, using fins, pulling, doing different strokes, a lot of backstroke, stuff like that. So for me, that I think it helped working on different strokes and being in a group environment, trying to stay up with everybody. When I'm swimming on my own, sometimes I'll look at the clock and I'm like, I'll take another 5 seconds to catch my breath. With them, it's like, no, go, go, go. And, you're forced out of your comfort zone. So that's how I saw the biggest improvement for me. And if he's lucky enough to have a group nearby, look at it. Most places do have a master swim program. If you go online, and there is sometimes a coach on deck, which for me, it was incredible having a coach there.
That could be, by the way, 1,500-yard warm-up. I don't even think I can swim that long right now.
Well, it's broken up into sets, not just 1,500 straight. It would be, like 5x100 kick, 4x50 freestyle sprints, stuff like that. It's a long warm-up.
Right. I think it probably would take me 6 hours to do that. So, but this is a good question that I have, because it's one that I honestly feel. I feel like some level of anxiety of thinking of going to Masters Swim and not being able to swim really well. Like, you know what I mean? Like for me, I can swim and I don't die when I'm in the water. But in terms of being an actual swimmer, I'm not even remotely close to that. So part of me has this like interior fear where it's like, well, I'm not a swimmer, so I shouldn't show up to that group of swimmers. How did you have that, and how did you address that at all?
Oh, I did. I was scared to death the first few weeks, but they separated by lanes. So it's like slowest lane to fastest lane. So I was in the slowest lane, but it's great because you're with swimmers around your own pace. And then as you improve, you can go into other lanes. So it's not like they just throw you in a lane with, people who swim for the Stanford collegiate swim team. So,
Amber.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I saw that in her bio. I was like, oh, sheesh. So it would have been great to have her on here answering questions. Maybe I could have learned a thing or two from her. But there's such a range. I found myself in a group with swimmers and the other side at the other end of the pool that were mostly triathletes and maybe adult onset swimmers. And then at the other end of the pool were people who did swim collegiately. And the workouts that were written for us, it told us a range. So the coach would write it in such a way where they would leave maybe on the 120 for the 115 for the 100, but we would leave on the 150. So it was all relative. Yeah. So once I got over that fear of, okay, I'm not swimming, like I'm not getting lapped. I don't have to worry about what they're doing. I just need to focus on myself and listen to the coach on ways to improve, my own swim skills. That helped. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the point when I start working on, because we're going to be doing the triathlon challenge in a couple of years, hopefully, when races shaking out as the way they are these days, but hopefully we are. And I'm excited to be a total noob at something like that and go through the whole process of learning. One of the things that Amber has talked about in particular with new swimmers and getting into this, and I totally have this as well, is it's hard to separate your breathing from the actual, the whole experience of swimming, and learning to actually manage your breathing and kind of decouple it from the survival that a lot of people feel they need to focus on when they're in the water. She's mentioned your limbic system and getting comfortable with that, and getting to the point where you can actually be comfortable in the water. And since you came from track and field and running, I don't know if you had training as a kid in water and you had just, spent enough time in it that you were comfortable, but did you have to overcome the feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm in the water, and getting comfortable with that? Or were you already kind of above that level when you started swimming?
Yeah, I was above that. Luckily, I grew up swimming. My parents put me in lessons as a toddler, and I grew up with a pool in my backyard. So while I wasn't doing structured training when I was a kid, I played in the pool. Like in the summer, you would always just find me out there. So I'm very comfortable in the water. And then I swam all 4 years of high school for my high school team, not as a club sport. So I think there's a huge difference between when you are on a club team where they're, training twice a day in the pool at 5 a.m. in the pool at 5 p.m. versus high school where it's only like a short season from October to February, and we're only training once a day. So I did have a huge comfort level with the pool. But I did find, and even now, to be honest with you, I still struggle with flip turns. It doesn't feel natural. I do them, but it doesn't feel natural at all. So, yeah.
Did everything change? So a lot of people talk about an open water swim just being a totally different experience. And I know a lot of people can kind of get completely thrown off and they feel like they have to relearn things even. They kind of forget what they've learned in the pool. Did you have that experience too, going from pool swimming and everything else in high school and then suddenly Ironman triathlon, you're in murky watered lakes?
Right. Yep. Totally night and day. I would not compare pool to open water. I think it's important to get that, to try some open water swims before you even race a triathlon. So there's so many more elements and things to deal with when you're doing open water versus the pool. The pool, it's, there's no current, there's no choppy water. You can hang on to a lane line if you need to. There's a black line that you follow. Open water, just sighting is hard, like making sure that you're going in a, straight line. Dealing with the current, dealing with the weather, if it's raining outside or something like that, or making sure that you have the right goggles because there could be a glare or it could be overcast and you have shaded goggles on. There's so many more things that you're dealing with when in open water compared to the pool.
On sighting, that's a really good point. A good friend of mine, actually, she worked here at TrainerRoad. We went to go support her for her first triathlon, and it was just a kind of a triangle shape in the water. They swam out to the triangle point, to one of the base of the points of the triangle, swam across to the other, and then swam back. And she did like twice the distance that she needed to because she kept swimming away from where she needed to go. So, and it was, tough in the moment, but then really fun to joke about later on with her, because it was just her first try at triathlon. But how do you do that? How do you sight when you're in open water in particular? That's probably pretty tough.
Yeah, I'm particularly bad at sighting. So I actually try to find somebody who I think is swimming in the most, the shortest distance and the straightest line. And I try to stay on their feet. That's actually what I did in Kona. Even though the buoys, like let's take an Ironman, usually the buoys, they're big, they're bright triangles floating out in the distance. And, while you look like you're going straight towards it, as you get closer, you're like, oh crap, I'm all the way over here. But if you can stay with the pack, they generally are swimming the most direct route possible. So I just try to follow their feet. I don't have to keep popping my head up so often to look out in the distance. I just kind of follow their bubbles and I just stay in that line. So for me, that works. Some people are really great about, being able to keep looking up, spotting and sighting, but I'm not. I am one of those people. I get out the water. I'm like, oh my God, how did I swim 1.4 miles? Like, how is that possible? So yeah. So for me, it's following, like getting in a pack and following that group and not
That's
relying on my sighting.
I'm excited for that day when I feel something like that, because we do have planned to do a full Ironman. So that's a lot. I can't imagine swimming that far. So
yeah,
it's going to be a whole thing.
Yeah.
Do you have any drills that you go back to or that you do semi regularly, perhaps more than others, that you found to be more impactful for you in improving your swim?
I'm not much of a kicker. So I do a lot of, with my fins, a lot of kicks with the board, kicking on my back, butterfly kick, just stuff to strengthen my leg and kind of get into a tempo. If I go a long time without kicking, I literally don't use my legs at all. And I do find that most triathletes don't. This seems like most of them use their upper body and they kind of save their legs for the bike and the run. But if I don't use my legs, I'm one of those people that sinks. So a lot of kick drills. I am somebody that uses a lot of the tools like the buoy to focus on my stroke. I didn't really use paddles until I started working with Coach Johnny, and that really helped me get a feel for the water and like proper strokes. So sometimes we'll do long sets with a buoy and paddles. And one of the things I felt really uncomfortable using, but I absolutely love now, is a snorkel. I had to use a snorkel after I had, we talked about this previously, after I had that horrific crash last year. I did a lot of damage to my neck, so I couldn't turn my head right or left for a while. I had to get a lot of therapy to be able to do that, but we wanted to get back into swimming so I could race. So I used a snorkel so I wouldn't have to turn my head and I could just breathe through the snorkel. And I found that because I wasn't out of breath and my head was just straight in the water, I was able to focus more on my form. And now I always incorporate a snorkel into my workouts. It makes such a huge difference for me. I didn't like it at first, especially like with the flip turn. I would get water in there and I'm like, oh my God, I'm drowning. But now I've gotten used to it. So it's like anything. At first it feels a little weird and off because you're used to turning your head. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's one positive thing that came out of the crash last year. It's like learning how to make it work with what I had and the snorkel. So if anybody's watching this and they want to give that a try, they're really cheap on Amazon, like $10. Just buy one of those snorkels that go in the front, not like a scuba, one that you would wear.
I've seen the ones you're talking about. Yeah, where it's kind of goes straight up the center.
Yep.
If you're watching on YouTube, you'd see that.
Exactly. Yep. So yeah, you just keep your head in the water. You don't have to worry about breathing or anything like that. You're literally just focusing on your form.
Because that's probably one of the toughest parts at improving your form is there's so many things to focus on while also focusing on not drowning, right? And kind of overcoming that natural fear that we have when we're in the water.
Mm-hmm.
So with all of that, it can be really tough to then make the small tweaks to your technique. So anything you can do to make yourself feel more at ease in the water is probably going to go a long way toward that. Super, super great examples with that. You know, Amber put down something too that I think is really important. She said, sometimes higher awareness of mistakes feels like regression when it's really just the next major step in progressing your technique. And that is so true. Like a lot of the time, those that are improving the most, they're most aware of their shortcomings as well, because they're focusing on improvement, and they're recognizing these things and being candid with themselves and making those sort of steps toward getting better. Many times it feels like I'll never get better, but you actually are when you're going along the way. And swimming can be particularly frustrating in that regard, because you feel like you're not as fast as everybody else you're around, or you just feel like you don't know where to go to improve, that sort of a thing. So having actionable things that you plan to do to improve your technique, which once again, master swim and having somebody on deck analyzing you would give you those things that you can work on. If you're working on them, you're getting better. If you're not working on them, you're probably not, and you're just fooling yourself.
Yeah.
So
yeah. We love to focus on our strengths and not our weaknesses, right? I'm like, if I could just run every day, I would be fine, but then I would be really, really bad at the other stuff. So it's so important to, you know, work on your weaknesses to get stronger.
Still waiting for that triathlon that's just run instead of swim. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Or like the shortest possible swim, the shortest possible bike, and then like a marathon.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Derek, he says, thank you so much for this awesome podcast. I recently discovered it, and I'm going through the whole catalog. I'm afraid I'll never get through it. There are a lot of episodes. This is episode 283, which is crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
He says, I grew up playing tennis at a nationally competitive level and ended up getting a full ride scholarship to uni. I was always an athlete with a lot of fitness and technique, but I lost my love for the sport midway through my schooling and just stopped entirely. It's not easy for me to say, but I had a real problem with losing, and that caused me to get so frustrated with the sport that I quit. I'm now in my 30s and have recently started criterium racing. I love the competitive nature of it and how hard it is, but even after just a handful of races, I'm already feeling the same feelings of frustration that come from losing. From what it sounds like, if I'm going to keep cycling, I'm going to need to get used to losing. Ain't that the truth, right? Lots of people show up to that line and only one person wins. Mm-hmm. He says, but how do I do this? How do I maintain motivation and not get frustrated when I get dropped halfway through a race? And this is a great one, because I know you're very competitive as well, Sika, and you also have done well in quite a number of different sports too. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've faced this. Like, winning is a ton of fun. It's awesome. Mm-hmm. But it kind of like there can be a dark side of that same motivation when just winning is the pure motivation. And that's like a fear of losing. And that fear can lead to frustration, and it can completely disenchant us with the sport. I don't know if you've faced anything similar to this. I know I have.
Yeah. Something my dad always says to me, if it was easy, everybody would do this. So like if I was just winning all the time, I did actually get to a point a couple of years ago when I really got into road racing. I was winning all the local, like I was racing every weekend, doing 5Ks, 10Ks, this is running. And then I got into triathlon, and I mean, I was coming in like last. The first few were just really, really bad. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this sucks. Why am I doing this when I could be winning that? But I really loved working on improving and like getting PRs and kind of like being forced out of my comfort zone. So for me, like that drives me. I like the nerves of like, not that I like being nervous, but I like, you know, not just completely knowing the outcome. Like if I show up to a small local 5K, I'm going to win. Like I like to, really just be like forced out of my comfort zone. And I mean, nobody wins all the time. Like look at Jan Frodeno, who, you know, he's an incredible Ironman athlete. And I think it was like 2 Konas ago, he was walking, you know, the marathon and finished like an hour later than he thought. So like nobody's perfect. Nobody's just going to win all the time. Or even recently, Eliud Kipchoge, I think he was going after the world record again. He ended up dropping out of the race. So, but that's the beauty in racing. Like you never know what's going to happen. You know, somebody who on paper looks like they're going to win and they don't. Sometimes you're like, oh, I'm going to get demolished, and you end up having a huge PR and you surprise yourself, and sometimes you just shock yourself with a win. So it's like just the unexpected. The unexpected is exciting.
Yeah, and that's like a lot of the time, if you're in the mindset of what Derek's talking about, the unexpected is what frightens you. Like you want like that certainty of the outcome that you're going to win. And I was the same way, Derek. I had the same sort of perspective on things, and I had to kind of wipe the slate clean and reconceptualize competition for myself. I'm just hyper competitive, and I was hyper competitive in everything. And it just got to the point where, since I was not able to control so many factors about the competitions I would find myself in, I got to the point where it was just so discouraging and so frustrating. So the big thing for me is, and it's like what you said, Sika, like measuring your improvement. Really what that means is instead of becoming outcome oriented, you become process oriented. And if you become process oriented, suddenly everything is within your control and you do have a clear path to success. You don't know necessarily if you will be able to achieve that or when you will be able to achieve that, but you can take the steps necessary that take you in that direction. And that has completely changed everything for me. I still have to work on it, like all the time. Like being a hyper competitive person, I can find myself in spots where it starts to become discouraging and off-putting. So I just really have to focus on what I can control and look at process goals, not just outcome goals, but process goals. And then every time I have any sort of a race, I look at everything from the perspective of what can I learn from this?
Right.
And I really can't stand that. I think it's the Conor McGregor quote when he says, you either win or you learn, or something like that. And
that's a good one.
Because I think that when you win, you should be learning just as much as when you lose. Like there's that sort of attitude of almost like, I only learn when I lose. I think that there's a lot of us that when we win, we aren't objective with ourselves about what we've done well and what we didn't do well, because nobody runs a perfect race, right? Like there's always room for improvement. So I just think, like, for most of us, especially that are listening to this, that, maybe you and I that are listening to this, not Sika, but, we aren't going to be racing pro. We aren't going to be getting paid to do this. This isn't going to be our career. And as a result, we don't have to put that sort of pressure on us. But I really think it's when you can separate everything and become more process oriented, racing becomes a ton of fun, because it's an opportunity to express all of those process goal achievements that you had. And it's like, I've done all this stuff. Now I get to see what I'm made of. Right. It's just great. So I think that that's the main thing, is stop becoming outcome oriented and instead process oriented, at least for me.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, also, like, you can take away something from every experience, whether it's good, bad, you win, you lose. There's always something that you learn from it. Even in workouts, I told you before, I would get really nervous just before really big workouts. Like, well, what if I don't make it through this set, or what if I bomb, or, what if I don't hit my splits or my watts or something like that? And it's like, okay, well, not every workout is going to be A+, not every race is going to go how I want it to, but, that's just the beauty of sports, and what makes us human and constantly striving to keep improving.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Well said, Sika. Joe, he says, first, thanks for your efforts in getting out your weekly podcast and great affordable training TrainerRoad provides. Yeah, it's our pleasure. That's why we do it. He says, I recently completed Sweet Spot Base mid-volume. I started with an FTP of 189 and tested at 213 in week 5 of general build. Way to go.
Oh.
Broke the 200 watt barrier. Joe says, I did a few more workouts and crashed on my mountain bike, breaking my collarbone, and I had to have it plated. I got back to the trainer and to do Taku, which is really just a very easy recovery, short recovery workout in the TrainerRoad catalog, a week after surgery. And this almost felt like a threshold workout. He says, that said, that feeling. Sika's laughing because she knows that feeling. He says, that said, 30 minutes on the trainer doesn't cause any sort of pain in my collarbone area, which is really common when people get a collarbone plated. It's actually pretty pain-free, and they can actually support themselves on it when they get it plated. So that's not uncommon. He says, my question, though, is what would you recommend in terms of workouts and intensity while I recover? Also, when recovered more fully, should I pick up where I left off or start over? So Sika, the crash that we're talking about here, it was, you can go to the Successful Athletes podcast and listen to this for more detail, but in the middle of a race, you moving through a pack of riders that are of a ton of different skill levels, and you're in the aero position moving fast, and extremely horrific crash, which concussion, severe facial damage as well, very severe accident. So you've had to come back from something like this too. How did you, this is a really tricky question for a lot of people. It's what's too much? And then we also have this fear of like, well, I don't want to just go back to square one from, you know, the height that I had achieved, so to speak.
Right.
How did you manage that when you came back on your training to decide what you should be doing, how much of it, and when you should be doing it?
Yeah, really listening to my body, just not overdoing it. I think it's always better when you're recovering, you know, from an injury, an accident, something like that, to hold back. A lot of the questions are coming from people who are athletes, and it sounds like they have a really strong base. You know, he said he tested over 200 for his watts for the test. And so, I mean, he's already a strong athlete and the base is there. I mean, unless you're literally taking a year completely off, not doing anything, like it's going to come back pretty rapidly. I was shocked. You know, for me, like the first month of just walking, I had totaled my bike. So I was at the gym, just like on a, you know, like one of those, one of the bikes that they had at the gym, a spin bike, and, you know, just doing little things like that. I couldn't swim for like 2 months. So I was like, oh my God, I'm literally going to be starting over. And like him, the first few what I'll call workouts were pathetic. You know, I was like, oh my God, like I can't even, you know, just spinning the 120 watts for an hour felt really hard. But then like the consistency of it came back. So, you know, be patient with yourself. I find that so many of us are like always rushing, like we'll be on the verge of having an injury, and instead of just stopping and like taking a day off, we'll keep pushing. And then before you know it, you have a stress fracture. And it's like, oh my God, if I had just, you know, like taken a step back before, I would be fine. So I was blessed last year with Coach Jonathan Karen, and he was so great about holding me back. You know, he started just like a walk, jog routine with me and stuff like that. I mean, heading into Texas, where I did crash, I was like at peak fitness, and I did immediately want to get back to that. But he's like, no, like I want you to just take it as easy as, you know, as easy as you can. I did things like take naps, which I'd never done before, to help my body recover. My parents were great. I had to stay with them for, you know, I live on my own, but I had to stay with them for a month to help them take care of me. And we were just like eating really healthy food and going to bed really early. And so it's just like doing all the little things. But yeah, have faith that it'll come back. You know, like even when COVID hit for me, I had a race that was scheduled in April, and I was really peaking at that point, but I was also completely exhausted. And when COVID hit and things got canceled, my coach was like, don't do anything for a month. Just like take that time off. And I was like, I don't know about that. But honestly, I think it was one of the best things for me because, you know, once I had that time off and I got back into it, I felt like ready to go.
Yeah. Amber has a great quote on this one where she talks about like, make your moment zero, kind of like your 0 point when you hit the ground. Like this is your restart point, instead of holding yourself to prior standards, right? Like, and focus on all the progress you've made from hitting the ground to where you are now, instead of from where you were before that. Like really try to reset, because it's really tough when you get to that point and you've done all that hard work, and you should be proud of yourself for getting to that point, and you don't want to let go of fitness. But when it happens, you can't hold yourself to those standards because it skews your judgment. You mentioned listen to your body, and I like, for me, I have to separate listen to my body from listen to my mind, because my mind is like, go, 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 push, 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 and go back to the person that you were prior to the injury. But if I listen to my body and separate it from the mind, my body will tell me something different than that. And that's really tough, and it takes time to be able to tune in to that frequency that your body's trying to tell you and tune everything else out. That is difficult, and it takes skill, and you won't be perfect with it every day. Some days you'll probably push a little too hard, some days a little less. But one of the ways that I look at this always is I try to analyze the risk instead of just kind of take the risk at what it is and roll with that. And I look at it like, okay, so like what are the potential downsides here? I either go back to where I was when I started rebuilding, or when I started building up for this fitness, and so I lose fitness, or I lose health and fitness because I push myself too far that I don't allow my body to become healthy again. And then I'm never going to get back to where I need to be. So it's really looking at like, do you want to prolong the injury and prolong your recovery period, or you want to accelerate it? And the way to accelerate it isn't by doing more. Much more often it's by doing less than our mind wants to do.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. I look back, there's so many times that I've done stupid things. Like, when you're on the verge of catching a cold, you can kind of feel it coming and you still are like, well, technically I could work out. Maybe I'll sweat it out. And then that's what does you in. And then the next day you're like literally sick. You have to call out of work. You miss a week of training. It's just like, oh my God, why didn't I just take that one day off?
Yes. Suddenly we're like, oh yeah, there's totally a lot of reason to that bro science where it says like, if it's above the shoulders, then it's fine. You know what I mean? But there's no scientific proof for anything like that. Instead, it's just always best to listen to our body and to really err on the side of caution, because it's so hard to dig yourself out of a hole. Right. Whereas if you can recognize it beforehand, maybe you can just prepare yourself better for it and get through it quicker. The other way too, with like injuries where you have like a comeback period that's defined by, the actual injury itself, like you physically cannot ride, much like what you experienced. I think it's important to involve your doctor in your whole process instead, because a lot of the time, you break a bone, it's like, 4 to 6 or 6 to 8, whatever weeks they give you.
Right.
And then I think the type A athlete in all of us hears that and we're like, 6 to 8 weeks, watch me do it in 4, doc. We see it as a challenge to beat that. But instead, and what we do is we kind of say like, okay, here's what the doctor says. I'm just going to hold that there. Then I'm just going to work in a silo and just kind of do something and really not involve the doctor at all. But one thing I think that's really important, the reason that the doctors almost all the time, if you break a bone, it's like 6 to 8 weeks or whatever the duration is. They're not oracles. Like they don't know exactly when you're going to heal, how you're going to heal, everything else like that. They need information to make sound decisions. And the more information they have, the better decisions they can make and the better insight they can give you. So I think it's really helpful to involve your doctor the whole way. And don't be afraid of coming off like a nerd, because your doctor is a nerd. They spent way too long in school. So like it's totally okay. There won't be any judgment here. But tell them, be like, so I usually do this amount of time every month or every week when I train, and I do these sort of workouts and I do this sort of thing, and this is what I train for, and this is how I race, and this is how I eat. This is what I usually do for recovery. Like overwhelm your doctor with information. They're used to that. That's their job. But give them all of that and say, and I'm really wondering how I should come back. Now, your doctor may not have a perfect answer for you, and I don't think there is a perfect answer, but the more information you give your doctor, I think it's a fair assumption that the better decisions they're going to help you or be able to help you make. So they'll be able to say, oh, okay, like I now realize that you're the sort of athlete that has great mobility, and you're the sort of athlete that actually understands a recovery routine, and you go through that and you try to take care of that anyways prior to the injury. It might take you 3 weeks, or while you're doing this, even though you usually foam roll this way, you'll want to do it this way. You never know. Your doc might have some really good insight for you. So don't just try to look at your doctor as a challenge to beat. Instead, look at your doctor as your friend and your ally. And I think it can go a long way. So a big help for sure.
Mm-hmm. And just one thing to add, something that I did when I was recovering from my crash last year, I did some things that I had never really done before. Like I hadn't strength trained really since college. I wasn't on any type of strength training plan. And because I couldn't put in all the volume and everything else, because I was, just slowly, gradually coming back into things, I started working with the strength conditioning coach 2 to 3 days a week in the morning before work. So, and now I actually incorporate that into my routine every week now, but working with the strength coach helped. I talked to other people. That's when they got into yoga. So there are other ways. If you're used to just going all the time and you are tempted to, push yourself over the edge and do things that you shouldn't be doing, try to find other ways to find other things that you can incorporate into your routine that will help actually improve your physical capabilities, like, strength training or yoga, or, I'm trying to think of other things that some of my friends have done. But yeah, so last year was new. I tried new things and I felt that it actually helped, and it helped me get back faster.
Yeah, durability for us endurance athletes is very important, because a lot of what we do just builds ourselves, triathlon is different in the sense that you're doing the 3 disciplines. So that can help build a more well-rounded athlete. But even then, if you just do those 3 disciplines, you're probably neglecting certain things that could help you be a much healthier person for sure. So yeah, good vote for that. Steven's question, he says, thanks for the awesome podcast along with the app. It helped me have the fastest bike split in my age group at my 2nd triathlon ever last week. Way to go, Steven. Exciting stuff. He says, even though I was much faster on all 3 splits than my first triathlon, I was still one of the slowest athletes in transition. It was a cold morning and a wetsuit swim, and everybody else seemed to get in and out of T1, which is the first transition, so quickly compared to me. I have a really old wetsuit that is not tri-specific. Are the tri-specific ones easier to get in and out of? That we should probably just address that question really quickly and then go into the rest. So some swims are wetsuit swims, some aren't, depending usually on the temperature of the water.
Right.
Is how they decide that. Do you have, I assume you have a tri-specific wetsuit, and are they easier to swim in or get in and out of at all?
Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of wetsuit it is that he used. And I know that for the most part, I think you have to use a USA triathlon sanctioned wetsuit. So hopefully I had one of those on. But yeah, the one I use a Zoot wetsuit, and I do find like the rubber, it's pretty easy, and practice. I actually do practice those things, even transitions for me, even dismounting, getting off my bike. Like sometimes after really long rides, I'll actually, take my feet out of the shoes, practice getting off the bike. So yeah, I mean, the triathlon isn't just 3 disciplines. It's not just swim, bike, run. It is, getting quickly from the swim, getting your wetsuit off, goggles, cap. And I actually go through a routine in my head as I'm getting out of the water. It always starts with unzip my wetsuit. Like as soon as I get out, unzip my wetsuit first, pull it down off my arms. Then I take my goggles and caps completely off. When I get into transition, I'm one of those people that actually, I first pull it down. I stand, like I put one foot down, pull it off, and then I get on the floor and pull the rest of it off. So yeah, I like go through the same routine over and over again in my head so that I'm not fumbling about. It's just always like the same 5 steps. And then, after you've done a few, it's innate, you just do it. So
we've never really gone into depth on like transitions in this podcast before. So this is awesome. Having that sort of routine, like you talked about, I want to go back even further with transition. So depending on the race and the organization, like Ironman races tend to be very organized where you have a specified location where you have to put your bike and everything else, right? Mm-hmm. But if it's like a local tri, it might just be like rack your bike where you want and that sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've experienced that, but how do you even stack your gear? Like, do you have a particular way where you put your shoes? Do you clip them into the pedals, or do you have them off the bike? What about your helmet? What about your glasses? How do you organize that part for the bike when you get onto it?
Right. And now that you bring that up, there's a huge difference when you do an Ironman race. They actually have wetsuit strippers. So as you're getting out the water, you just lay down and they take your wetsuit off for you, which I'm sure now with COVID, that'll probably stop. But it's been great having that. So yeah, for me, I rack my bike. For the most part, even if it's a small race, they tell you like you'll be assigned a number and you go to the rack and, you put your bike where the number is. Underneath my bike, I have a transition mat. You can even use a towel. You don't have to invest in a mat. And then on the towel, I spread everything out. So I put usually I put my helmet on my bike in between the TT bars so that when I run to my bike, I could just pick it up, put it on my head. I don't leave my shoes clipped in. I'm actually one of those people. I run like a doofus with my shoes on, and then I hop on the bike. I am not that coordinated to be able to just, clip it, like leave them clipped in. So yeah, I put my shoes on. So after I take off my wetsuit, or if you have a swim skin, if it's not a wetsuit legal race and the water is above, I think 76 degrees. So I strip that off. I run, to my bike, and the very first thing I do is always put my helmet on, strap it, make sure that it's okay. And then I put my shoes on, and then I take my bike off and then I go run out of transition. But in the transition area, just make sure you have everything that you need. I have like my bike section with my shoes and maybe a gel or something. And then I also have my run stuff in that same mat area. So when I come back after I drop my bike off, I put my shoes on, I put my race belt on, I put my sunglasses on. So it takes a few times. You might even like, okay, if you don't know what you're doing, you can actually go online and go on YouTube and see what a transition area, setup looks like. Or for me, it was always looking at what other people do. Like even when I went to as experienced as I am now, when I was at Kona, I was looking at other people's transition areas, like what they had set up and even their bags with nutrition and stuff. I was kind of taking a peek like, well, what did they put in? So
yeah, it's a whole process, and it definitely would contribute to the overwhelming feeling somebody might have if they're really nervous about the race, right? Like, even though it's a small portion of the race, it's funny how we can fixate on that, and that can actually end up being the source of stress, whereas we spend so much time on the bike or on the run or on the swim. It's kind of funny how that works. On the shoe side of things, do you use like shoes that have like any sort of like quick draw laces or any other format, or is it just standard laces and do you take the time to tie them? How do you work that out?
No, for my run shoes, I do have quick laces. I do find that makes a difference. That, and I don't want my shoelaces so your feet are usually wet and stuff, and your laces could easily become untied. That, and it saves time just having the quick laces quickly sticking my feet in my shoe and just kind of pulling them and going off. So I save a lot of time that way. So I do recommend that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, same with road shoes as well. I actually remember seeing when laced road shoes became really big for a while. I remember seeing some triathletes with laced shoes, but they were using like little elastic laces instead as a way to kind of put them on. But there are tri-specific shoes that are a lot easier to get in and out of and everything else with that. It can really help. It's funny that you mentioned like having the shoes clipped in. And I know that like that's like a thing that a lot of people want to do because it looks pro and everything else. And then just like, it's super fast, but it's kind of along the same lines of when you get off the bike and you come into T2, like there's also a temptation, I think, for a lot of people to look like a cyclocross rider or something and like, casually swing the leg over and then just like hop off and be able to just run really easily. But
I do that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But heading out, going from the swim to the bike, having my shoes clipped in, that you'd be surprised. People, it looks so professional, but then you see people fumbling for like 2 miles down the road, still trying to get their feet in their shoes, about to crash. I'm like, it's not worth it. Just, sit down, put your shoes on in transition and go run off and then, immediately clip in. It's not worth trying to look pro unless, you do have the time to really work on that. And some people are really good about that. But yeah, you'd be surprised. I'll see people literally miles down the road still fumbling, trying to get their feet in their shoe, like swerving all over the road.
Yeah, I remember seeing at Ironman Arizona and even Kona, athletes actually crashing when they were running with their bikes because of that very thing, because their shoes are still clipped in. And that makes like effectively, if you think about it, suddenly you have a really long crank arm and it can hit the ground really easily. And actually at Kona, where they had you come in, there were kind of like roots lifting up the pavement in an area that was like right there at transition. And a number of athletes I saw unclip, they'd take their feet out of their shoes before they got to transition, and they'd just be pedaling coming into T2 to get ready for the run. And their feet would be on top of their shoes, and then they do like a cyclocross dismount, but then their crank arm with the shoe on it, it'd hit the ground, and then their bike would kind of just flip and they'd crash over their bike. So there's so many things that when you look at it, you're like, oh, I can save like, 5 seconds here. And it's like, yeah, but then you could also risk losing minutes or the whole day. Like Andy Potts actually coming into transition one year, I think that he broke his collarbone there in transition. So, and it was because of something that probably could have been avoided in that sort of a scenario. So it's always worth it just to take the smooth approach that's not going to derail race day, that probably is going to lower your anxiety. And practicing transitions like that seems like a great thing to do. Whether it's and you don't have to do a brick to do that. You can just practice the transition itself, right?
Yep, I've done that too. Yeah. Well, I'll just spend, like I'll go out on a ride with friends and then I'll come back to my house and just in the parking lot, I'll go around and I'll practice little stuff like that just to get a feel for it.
Yep. Then you're not uncomfortable on race day. It's all these things just contribute to allowing yourself to perform better, like super important. Okay, let's go into Ruby's question, and this is going to be the last one. So shorter podcast to be respectful of your time on this one. Ruby says, as a woman listener, I really appreciate Amber's presence on the podcast. I wish she was here today. She has amazing insight that I wish I would have heard back when I was a younger athlete in my 20s. I'm now in my late 40s and have gotten back into triathlon with a group of friends. This sport is so different now. The different options for bikes and equipment are just overwhelming. I'm really enjoying it, and what a fun experience it has been reconnecting with the sport I loved years ago. One thing that hasn't changed is my battle with eating on race day. I used to get so nervous I'd throw up anything I'd eat before a race. So I got used to not eating before a race. Looking back now, it makes sense why I would always run low on steam midway through the bike leg. Yeah, it makes sense. Fast forward to present day, and while I don't have the nerves I used to, I do have a hard time making it through the run during a race or even a long training run without a few trips to the bathroom when I eat gels. Most people I talk to say gels are easy on the stomach. So what should I do? Should I focus on natural food instead? That's a great question from Ruby here. What do you do for nutrition, Sika? Because that's like the fourth and probably most influential leg a lot of the time of triathlon. A lot of people talk about it. Like if your nutrition is off, it doesn't really matter how good the rest is.
Right. I'm lucky that my stomach is always, I never have any digestive issues at all. I do get nervous. I get so nervous in the morning, I don't want to eat, but I force myself to eat because if you don't take in any calories, you're not going to have energy. So yeah, I do. I find for me, either oatmeal or cereal before a race helps a lot. And on the run, I'm actually one of those people, I don't take in as many gels as other people do. And even on the bike, I'll actually eat a Cliff Bar. But for the most part, I'm just fluid based. I just drink a ton. I just taken a lot of electrolytes. So most of the calories that I am having, it's from fluid and not necessarily gels and stuff. Like when I get on the run, luckily we have each aid station, I want to say is 1.5 miles to 2 miles. So I'll just take in as many cups of like I'll alternate between water and Gatorade on the course. So yeah, I'm mostly a fluid based person. So that's what my caloric intake is like. How about you?
Yeah, so it's evolved, and now I'm almost entirely fluid. I drink my carbohydrates, and then I can also take in gels. And then in terms of sodium, what I do to replenish that is I take in salt tablets from Precision Hydration has these ones that you can get that are like little 500 milligram tablets that you can take, or 250 perhaps. I can't remember right now, but I take those and they come in like a little blister pack. So it's really nice if you're doing a longer event or anything like that, which is when I make sure I take in sodium like that. It just sits in your jersey pocket without them getting wet, without anything like that. And then it's just a little capsule that you just pop in and then you can swallow and go through with that. So that's really helpful. But it took me a long time to get to the point where I could tolerate gels. And I think for a couple of reasons. Number one, I didn't understand that gels themselves, like when I took in a gel, I needed to take in a certain amount of water to be able to make it so that my body could process that gel.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to keep in mind. There are gels that are isotonic, like Science and Sport makes some.
That's the one I use.
Yep, and I find them to be fantastic. The flavors, I don't think anybody's eating a gel for flavor. Like it's not like you're like, it's delicious.
Exactly. You just find the most tolerable one.
Yeah, and because the point is you're getting efficient fuel that makes you faster, right? So that's the whole deal there. Science and Sport makes great ones. I use Marten gels, which they're like Jell-O, not gel, and it's a very different experience the first time you have one because it's like kind of like thick and clumpy like Jell-O, and I know that sounds disgusting to take down, and it might be the first time, but then you get used to it. The flavor is just sugar, effectively, so there's nothing really off-putting necessarily about it, but. So I'm now to the point where I take in around 100 to 120 grams an hour, depending on the event and the intensity. And I'll take that in through almost entirely through the mix that I'm drinking and then the gels. And one of the things I've said on this podcast plenty of times is I know a lot of people say, oh, there's no way I could do that. And it would be a shame to let palate fatigue or, oh, I don't like this flavor. Oh, I can't drink that anymore. It'd be a shame to let that ruin an otherwise good race, right? Like, because we're so dependent on the fuel that we need to have. So But the way that I've gotten to where I am now with that, where I can fuel with that high amount of carbohydrate, and it's crazy. You'll feel like you're cheating once you do it. It's nuts. Like you just have so much energy and RPE drops and you can just keep doing more. But it's all through training. And I just worked my way up very slowly. And now when I'm on the bike, my rule for myself is if I'm spinning pedals, I'm eating. And it doesn't mean that every pedal stroke I'm eating something, but that means that if I plan on doing an hour workout, I make sure that I have something that's, if it's an easy workout, I might do 60 grams of carbs, something less. But if it's a hard workout, I do 90 to 120 grams of carbs, depending on what I'm doing there. So I always make sure that I have something that I'm working on, and I've stepped myself up from like 30 grams an hour of carbs all the way up to this point now. And it just makes such a huge difference. It's crazy. Like, yeah, you'll feel like you're cheating. And it does take a while though for your gut to get used to it for sure.
Yeah, I remember recently when I was training for this ultra marathon, I was doing a 50K and I was trying to get through a long run, and I actually started bonking, I want to say around like 16 or something. And I had a bottle with me. I was drinking electrolytes and I'm like, oh, maybe I need another gel. And it's funny, after I took in the gel, literally within probably a half mile, like within 4 minutes, I immediately felt the effects and I felt great. Like it's funny how in tune, if you just like listen to your body, what it needs. Sometimes when you are bonking, you don't realize it. Or one race I did, half-IRONMAN, I told my coach by the time I got on the run, I started feeling terrible around like mile 9. And we went over my nutrition and he was like, oh, you didn't take in nearly as many calories as you should have. And, looking back, he's probably right. So yeah, it's important to like make sure that you're consuming enough for the amount of work that you're putting out.
Yeah. One thing, this is purely anecdotal and I have no science to back this up, but one thing too is if I take in gels with caffeine or drink mix with caffeine, something like that, and I'm also not a habitual caffeine intaker. So, but when I do that, many times that does such a good job at lowering RPE that I have to be vigilant because I will actually ease up on my nutrition plan thereafter. For example, the beginning of the race, I take in a caffeinated gel, and then many times I won't take another gel the next hour, when in any other circumstance, I would absolutely be hitting my mark of that bottle of mix and a gel per hour that I take in. But because the caffeine kind of like lowers RPE and I feel like I'm floating on clouds and everything's good, a lot of the time I'll think, I don't need that gel. You do. Like, stick to the plan. Like your body needs it.
Yeah, my coach told me that too. So I never drank Coke in a race until Kona, the Ironman World Championships. He was like, if things are going south, you feel really terrible, you feel like you're not going to make it, like that is your last resort, just start drinking Coke. But he's like, I'm warning you, once you start drinking it, you have to keep drinking it the rest of the way or you're going to bonk. So I remember him saying, I remember around like 17 or 18, I wanted to take a nap. Like I just wanted to lay at the side of the road. So I was like, all right, it's time for me to start drinking Coke. And I did. And I felt the effects immediately. It woke me up. But then I remembered what he said, that you have to keep, like once you take in that caffeine, your body now needs it or else you'll bonk. So I had to keep taking it for the rest of the time until I got to the finish line.
Luckily, they had that at all the aid stations. Thank goodness.
Yes. Yes. Yep. I'm like, oh, now I understand what this Coke thing is about. So.
Yeah. So, and we actually go into more depth in terms of your experience at Kona, which is super cool in that Successful Athletes podcast episode. So just to qualify for Kona, you have to be like such an elite athlete. So it's super cool accomplishment. Let's talk about nerves a little bit. Like, I feel like pre-race habits, one of the things that I think of with this is just because you have something that's like habitual before a race, number one, doesn't mean that it's consequential to it doesn't mean that it's like required for your performance. Also doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. Like, I feel like a lot of us have unhealthy pre-race rituals that we stick to because we just feel like it's our pre-race ritual, but it's probably not healthy. And it also doesn't mean you can't change them. You always can. Like, there's actually a famous supercross racer, so a dirt bike racer, who his whole life he has thrown up before every single race, and he's in his 30s now, and he's been racing since he was probably like 5 years old, and he still throws up before every single race. Like, that isn't healthy. That's a really bad physical way to prepare yourself for any sort of an athletic endeavor, right? Like, yeah, that's not good. But it just shows that many times we can build these habits and these relationships where we get to a point where we just think it's normal, but it's not. And you could even say the same for nerves. Like a certain level of nerves are good to have. Like you don't want to show up to the line and be sleepy and apathetic and not care. Like you want to care.
Right.
But at the same time, like, you know, you can't, if it is overwhelming you, that's something that you can control that can improve your performance. I feel like one of the things that I feel like really helps that is being process oriented. If I've controlled my process going into it, and I know that I've trained well and I've accomplished the things that I needed to accomplish leading into it, then I remind myself of a very important thing on race day is that nobody, and hopefully if I'm process oriented, definitely not myself in this case, but nobody's requiring anything from me that I can't do. Like you're not supposed to outdo yourself. You're not supposed to be somebody you're not. You're just trying to be the best version of yourself. Like the way that I look at that is you're just trying to fulfill your potential on that day. And that part is specifically totally within your control to fulfill your potential within that day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that just really helps me. And my potential may evolve from one day to the next, but my effort to fulfill it is constant. And that just really helps me calm down on race day. And Pete actually is a great example of this. We have him on the podcast all the time from Cliff Bar, or from Team Cliff Bar, but also TrainerRoad employee, really good crit racer. And Pete is an example of calmness before a race. He's just so calm, very zen, and he's never nervous. And I think it's because of this. He's very process oriented, and he knows that he's not supposed to be anything he isn't. He's just supposed to do his best, and he can control that. But Sika, I'm sure with you, and you had a lot of anticipation and fear with getting used to the bike and everything else. But then after the crash, I can't imagine even more so. But how have you wrestled with this?
Yeah, I'm not like Pete. I cry. So I don't throw up. I actually cry. I tend to cry a few days before the race. And my parents hate it. They're like, we dread when we see your number on the caller ID the week of a race, because I always call I'm like, I'm not ready. I need more time. I don't want to embarrass myself. And I just like wail. It's like routine. Although I have gotten better about it the past few races. Actually, after my crash, to be honest with you, I was so grateful to be back and able to do it. It wasn't like something I had to do. I looked at races before. It's like, okay, I'm signed up and now I have to do this. And now it's kind of like, oh, wow, I get to do this. I learned that when I was recovering from my crash. It was really hard watching all my friends be able to race all summer. And I was just sitting around recovering and I wasn't able to race. I mean, I was happy for them. I was living vicariously through them, but I felt sad for me because I wasn't able to race. So now it's like just an overwhelming sense of like gratitude when I get to race now, because you never know when it's going to be taken from you. You know, I have some friends who end up injured for like a year. They can't race for a year. So the fact that we are able to race, whether it's a good race or a bad race, like sometimes I would read people like, I had such a crappy race and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be sitting there like, well, at least you get to race. I don't know when I'm going to get to race again. So that helped a lot. So actually, when I finally did my first race after my crash, and then when I did Augusta, I was nervous as hell, but I wasn't crying. I wasn't like feeling sorry for myself for the pain that I knew I was about to put myself through. And something that I do for me also for just even a 5K I did recently. I haven't raced a 5K on the road in forever, but I looked at some of the training that I had done heading up into the 5K just to see where I was at. And it gave me a lot of confidence. I really, sometimes, you do a workout and you're like, oh, that was great. And then you don't really think about it again. But before a race, for me, it helps going back and seeing like, wow, I really crushed that workout. Like I should take a lot of confidence from that one workout that I did, or, even like watts on the bike, like, oh, like I've been really killing it on the bike. I have extra strength that I can take into this race. So yeah, it helps me looking back, or just even comparing. I love the app, the feature in TrainerRoad where you can compare the two lines on the bar graph.
Yes,
so
your
like
PR, your PR chart. Yep.
Exactly. I do that all the time. I'll look at where I was. Sometimes I'll just go back to 2017, the year of 2017, map that out, and then I'll compare it to like 2019, and just to see like, oh my gosh, over 20 minutes, I've improved by 40, 45 watts. Like there's just so much confidence to take from that, to see where you are.
That's a great way to look at it. Like look back at what you've done. And then also like for a lot of athletes, once again, kind of going back to Derek's question originally about the whole, the fear of losing and frustration with it, just look back at what you've done, then know that like, okay, I can execute to that level. Like now the challenge is, can I actually do that on race day? Like it's not look back to where you once were when you were crazy fast and the stars aligned and you did that. Instead, it's look at where I am right now. How can I execute on that? And if you do that, it just changes competition, because then it just becomes a good chance to prove yourself to yourself rather than prove yourself to everybody else. And tons of other things too. With more racing, if you're really focusing on improving this whole pre-race nerve situation, more racing will help you. But you have to be focused on improving it. You can't just race and expect the nerves to go away. That won't necessarily happen unless you're really working at it and kind of changing the perspective you have on it. So, Amber, I wish we had her on this question because she's so great at breaking down the psychology of things, having raced around the world as a pro road racer and dealing with also racing in totally foreign countries and foreign environments and dealing with all that. So she'd have some great stuff too. But one of the things that she did mention that I think is really important is having a pre-race routine that you can control and you can focus on. Instead of having a pre-race routine that's dependent on other people and everything else. And I'm like, I guess not famous for this, but I'm known for this, for having my own pre-race routine, and I get in my own world, and people say I'm largely unfriendly before a race, but I swear it's not intentional. I'm just in my own focus zone, and I have a routine that I follow and I stick with that. My dad was great at helping me reinforce that my whole life. With racing. So get a good routine that you have and let it be something that actually you find enjoyment in and something that helps you really focus and feel calm and work on that. And you can use training, like you said, for that, because sometimes we all get nervous before big workouts too. But training is another opportunity to reinforce these same habits so that then on race day, it just feels like another training environment. So, yeah. Sika, thank you so much. This has been an awesome episode.
My pleasure. Hopefully I gave some kind of words of wisdom.
Of course. Yeah.
I'm still learning too. I'm still a student. So
like I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, you're going for your pro card, which is exciting. You almost got it last year. You missed out by just a handful of minutes. So close. But then you still qualified for Ironman World Championships in your age group, which is just amazing. So congratulations on that. But where can people follow along for us to support you and cheer you on in your racing from afar, especially these days? But where can we do that?
Sure. So yeah, I'm active on social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. My handle's at Sika Henry, SikaHenry. I have a website. If you want to contact me, you can contact me there at SikaHenry.com. And I'm finally on Strava.
Sweet. Oh, cool. I'm going to have to follow you on there. That'll be good. So yeah, follow Sika, get in touch with her. If you have questions for Sika, you can always submit them at TrainerRoad.com/podcast and we'll get them to her. If you have questions in general for the next episode, for when the crew returns, everybody back here, then you can submit them as well at TrainerRoad.com/podcast. Please do that. And we will talk to you all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.